Hey everyone, this is Olivier here. Thanks for joining us today, and hope you're having a great day. I'm having my coffee here, and I'm tuning in from the area of Seattle, and hope you guys are enjoying the day to start with. Today, I would like to talk about the following, which is simplifying IoT and really expressing the fact that it's time to simplify IoT. But before I get going, you should definitely feel free to send your comments and questions over in the chat. I will try while I'm talking, while I'm doing the demos, to pick on them and answer these questions. So feel free to just throw your questions my way, and I will try to address them. So, time to simplify IT. If you're here, you read the description. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have this series, actually, we'll talk about that. It's a series of 4 episodes here on the reactor, is because we've been talking about simplifying IoT the wrong way, in my opinion. We've been starting conversation around saying IoT is complex, it's very complicated, and we have tons of tools to help you. So it's true that we have tons of tools to help our customers building their IoT solutions, integrating IoT solutions into their applications. But at the end of the day, we should not make look IoT as something that is super complicated. And what I'm going to try and do is simplify the way we talk about IoT so that it's accessible to everyone. IoT is something that now is everywhere, ubiquitous. It's something that integrates into applications because it adds value to applications. You know, putting sensors on your refrigerator in your place is maybe one of the many applications you might see. And the first reaction from people is like, hey, why would I do that? Well, here's the reason. For the manufacturer of that fridge, it's super interesting to have data that show the health of that fridge, not only for providing a new type of service to their consumers, but also to enhance their production, to detect flaws that might not have been detected. And it's something that that actually adds value to both consumers and to the manufacturer. And so IoT really needs to be discussed because not just embedded or device developers now are involved. We have way more people that get involved into IoT projects. And as we'll see today, one of the steps is to prototype your applications. So we'll talk about that today. So we have people here from India, from the French Riviera. Oh, like you're lucky, man. I hope you're enjoying your time down there. So once again, feel free to throw your questions my way, and I will try and answer them as they come. If I miss one of them, don't worry, I'll try to come back to them after. And we might be taking some time towards the end if we have time, if I don't talk too much, if I'm not too long with my demos. So this is the first episode of a series of 4, and maybe there's going to be more after, because I think IoT content is really something that not only I'm passionate about, but I'm sure interests a lot of people. And so the first part is about the first step in a project, which is prototyping a solution. What I would like to wrong check-in link, Microsoft Reactor. I'll let my friends from your Reactor actually try and help there. Hopefully, people can reach here. So the part 1 is about simplifying the way you can prototype a solution. When you want to validate the use of IoT infrastructure and devices into your solution, you need to validate first that there is an interest, right? You have a hunch that it's going to be useful to have data from sensors to enhance your application. So I guess the first thing is really to prototype a solution. And we'll talk about what it takes to prototype a solution. And at the end of the day, we'll try and make sure that everyone understands that you don't need to be a rocket scientist to make it work. You actually don't even need to be a software developer to make it work. And I'll demonstrate that in a minute. The second part will be about looking under the hoods. Today we'll do not some magic, but we'll make it super simple to connect a device, implement a simple scenario. But then you will need to look into how do you integrate your devices into solutions, existing one and new ones? What are the different features? What are the APIs? What does it take to authenticate a device and things like that? So we'll talk about that next week. The third discussion is about something which is pretty hype because you're seeing tons of demos around it. It's about making the edge, intelligent. And at the end of the day, we see demos of, vision AI or object detection and recognition, and all of these seem to be pretty complex and complicated. But we'll see that it's not that hard, and I will explain why during that third episode in a couple of weeks from now. Last but not least, we'll talk about the I in IoT. IoT stands for Internet of Things. And we very often talk about the gizmos, the devices, because that's the cool part for us technologists. That's the part that we want to spend time on because we are big kids, right? We all want to play with that. And so we did to though talk about the internet side of things. If you're on the embedded side of things, if you're developing for devices, well, that internet thing might be a bit scary. It's about the cloud, about the services. But what I would like to do is demystify some of these services. What are the big buckets or the big types of services you need to be aware of and start work with when you integrate your IoT devices into your solution? So this is the series. Hope you're going to enjoy that. And you definitely will want to ask questions. You will also want to eventually suggest things, right? So if the series, is going in a direction you're not super a fan of, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to correct that and bring elements there. So let's talk about that first topic, prototyping a solution. So prototyping is something that is essential. We see that lots of projects, and not just for IoT or IoT-related projects, lots of projects just fail at the proof of concept or just stop there. And very often it's because the proof of concept whether it doesn't make sense, doesn't work, or doesn't really reveal the value add of IoT devices into your solution. So what you want to do is think about how you can prototype a solution without spending too much time and too much resources on it, so that you can rapidly validate the first most important things for your idea, which is there value in bringing these devices into my solution? And for that, you'll need to think about, what will make this prototype relevant? Well, what will make that prototype as close as possible to something that demonstrates the value of connecting these devices? So there are different ways you can do that. You have an existing solution. Let's say, for example, I'm going to use that example over here because thermostats is the hello world of IoT. And I'm fine with that. If you've seen things around, hey, here is my temperature that's flowing into the cloud, I'm going to try and show you a version of that is a bit more interesting than the basics, right? But still, let me pick that thermostat scenario and let me position that thermostat scenario in the context of, let's say, a cheese cave or a wine cave. Maybe because I'm French, these came up as ideas. So when you have a wine cave, today, you can have a solution where you have a thermometer and you go and check the temperature and you make sure the temperature and as well humidity eventually are stable, because that's what will make your wine or your cheese of quality. And depending on the type of wine, type of cheese, you need to adapt that temperature. So you can do that manually, all good. But then when you go to something bigger and want to offer, I don't know, something like wine cave management, or cheese cave in a box as a service to customers, well, what you need is to be able to remotely monitor what's going on, but also start interacting with these sensors and devices, right? So you need to have a set of sensors that will collect data. In our case, it's going to be some temperature and humidity because that's the hello world. You're going to need to display that data somewhere so that it's visualized, and then you will need to implement some workflows. The workflows based on the scenarios you want to keep. And so one of them could be, and I will describe the scenarios actually right now. So that wine and cheese cave, after you measure all of that, eventually you want to measure also movements in that cave, because some of that content could be of value. So you want to detect someone is in that one cave, for example, and when. Or eventually you want to trigger, a workflow that will turn lights on or off or something like that, right? You want to be able to send commands or control these devices remotely. Seeing data and not being able to do anything gives you some, but not a lot. So you definitely need to do a bit more there. You need to be able to control these devices. In our case, we're going to do something simple. We're going to turn a light on and change a color. And basically that's what you would do if like you want to, for example, set a certain light warmth, right? A light could be something that heats, things that are in there. I had some other ideas for scenarios besides wine and cheese, but I'm not sure that was super appropriate for an online video like that. But scenarios where you need to control the coloring of light, the warmth of that light, in order to make sure your plants or something grows correctly underneath. So that's plants could be a good idea of a scenario here. Another thing you want to do, you want to automate things. You want to automate workflows in your backend. You want to get notified when something is wrong based on certain criterias, and you want to take action, and all of that automatically. Another very important thing, you need to integrate into your business workflows, right? If you're providing a service, seeing the data, having alerts that are generated by your solution is not enough. You need to trigger these workflows. An example of that we'll implement is, or we'll show you how to implement very easily, is to request maintenance to a certain individual or a team through business tools. All of that integrated into Azure IoT. So I said the word Azure IoT. I'm going to use Azure IoT as my demo platform. That's not to say that it's the only platform. You can definitely think about different platforms that are out there. You can also very much build your own. And that's something that you might want to consider. If really you don't want to be attached to a set of services, you can create your own applications that implement these basic notions of connecting a device, being able to read data from that device, sending commands down to the device, and then on your back end, automating workflows using APIs to services you're familiar with or whatnot. But what I want to do is I want to show you, how you can do that in a simple way. So let me show you some of the hardware things that we're going to use. So to implement a prototype of an IoT solution, obviously you need to have data from sensors and devices, because that's the value you want to validate, the fact that these sensors and these devices add value to your solution. Before I get in there, what's the prerequisites? What need to be installed for Linux? So no prerequisites right now, and for what I'm going to show, everything is going to be me showing you. Hopefully you can take it from there. The tools I'm going to use are online. Some is hardware that I have over here. And so you won't be able to use the hardware, but you'll be able to actually follow and then follow up with what I'm going to show you today, because it should be pretty straightforward. That's the idea over here. And so the first thing you need, as we're saying, is you need to have data. And you can do that using an Excel spreadsheet of data has been captured from actual sensors. And you can basically simulate your source of data into your solution using that kind of source. You can use a database, obviously. But if you want to validate an actual scenario, if you want to trigger events that are close to reality to really demonstrate the value of IoT into your solution, I really recommend you consider having actual sensors and devices that can be put in the environment that they're supposed to go into, and so that you can see real life action. But that doesn't mean that you need to have the actual final hardware. You don't need to start shopping today for the expensive thing, or to start designing your PCB or hire a company to do that for you. There are developer kits out there that are designed to allow you to build this kind of proof of concepts. And these have different formats because, there are different types of solutions out there. You can have things like this little guy here, which is called the MX chip, which has a lot of different components on it. Have a connector as well, allow you to extend the functionality. But right in there, you already have things like temperature, humidity sensor, gyroscope for detecting the positioning of that thing. You have LEDs, your LEDs for displaying things. You also have a little monitor in there where you can display things. So things like that are not meant to go to production. They're meant to be used for prototyping, validating that your scenario make sense, add value for you then to build a custom device or get a custom device based on the hardware or some slight variations of that hardware into your solution. You might all know about the Raspberry Pi, right? Raspberry Pi is a good example of what I would call a mini PC, which is easy to program if you are a software developer, if you're familiar with Linux, if you're familiar with all the libraries that are available. They have a connector that allows extending the baseboard with sensors, with displays, with a bunch of things that will allow you to create a device that comes close to what you will have at the end of the day. Other ones, like the one I'm going to use today, so that's this one here, have an enclosure, have a display, have buttons on it, and are very useful for this kind of prototyping. Once you have such a device, you can definitely think about how you're going to bring some code or some functionality on it to implement what the device is supposed to do. And I just want to reassure those of you who are not developers, because there is some in it for you as well. You don't need to code, or you can pick the language of your choice. If you're not familiar with C and C++, which are used in the Arduino world out there, you can also have solutions that leverage your favorite language, like Python or Java or JavaScript, sometimes leveraging Node underneath. And so you will definitely play around with what you're familiar with to implement something that is as close as possible to what you want your sensors and devices to be in your solution, so that you can really validate once again your scenario and the value add of IoT. If you are using Arduino, I was mentioning that, you can definitely think of Arduino as one way of creating these devices for your prototyping. And M5 Stack is one I have right here. Bruce has recognized that. Glad you have a Core 2. This is actually that's actually the Core 2, I think. I'll have to double check that. But anyways, it's good enough for what I need to do. What I will do now is show you how, and that's not the only solution. I mentioned Arduino. You also have a bunch of developer tools that allow you to rapidly compose and build. What I like with this little board here is that it is the enclosure. It has also a set of sensors you can connect. These sensors, let me get back to this other video here. These sensors that come with that board are what we call growth connectors. It's been something that Seed Studio has been developing and that is available out there, and many people start using that. And so you can actually have these little sensors that are packaged or sometimes just wide open. This one is an RGB LED. And you have this little connector where you cannot go wrong because there's only one way to put it in. And then there's a port that has the same connector on that board that allows me to just very easily say, I'm going to add a new sensor to my solution very simply by just connecting two plugs. If you want to go more custom, obviously, you will want to go with something where you start adjusting your bits and pieces, electronics and sensors over what we call a breadboard. And that allows you to extend that device in that scenario without having it be a naturally complete PCB that has all the sensors and all of the connectors and so on embedded in them, right? So here is very flexible, and you can leverage a development port that is very basic with just the chip on it and the connectors for extending with sensors. So that's something that's a bit more advanced here. I'm not going to do that today because what I want to do is use something that does not require any tooling in terms of soldering, in terms of all of that. So let me show you that little tool here. This is something called UI Flow. This is something the M5 Stack company has put out, and I'd like to use it for this kind of demonstrations because you should not be blocked by the fact that you have to learn how to code for a device to validate a scenario where IoT devices are supposed to bring value to your solution. Let me get onto that. Here, that UI allows me to connect to a device. A little device down here, which is this guy here. This little device has a firmware running on it that M5 Stack provides for developers, which is very useful. It connects to a cloud service directly over a Wi-Fi connection, and then in the backend connects to that UI Flow tool here. And that tool here is WYSIWYG, is super graphics. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a title. real quick here. This title is going to be called, I don't know, my room, for example. Well, I know because the demo has been prepared, right? I'm going to select green for the background here of that bar. I like the green color. It's also because blue and red don't work really well. Let me add a label. This label will show something like, guess what, temperature. What I want to do right now is display the temperature from a sensor on my screen. Let me make it look a bit bigger. Let me create a second one here. This one will be called humidity. You get the point. I'm going to add a new one. This one actually will be the one used to display the value. So let me say temperature, that. Same thing, I need to be a bit bigger. And it's going to display, let me say, oh, I wanted that here. That's the name. The color doesn't matter. And the text in there should start with 0. Okay. So that's what I'm going to write here for temperature. Let's close that. So let's duplicate that. I'm going to put it right here. You see it's all aligned using the graphical tool here in the browser. So it's pretty straightforward and useful. I'm going to have humidity and text will be 0 for now. Perfect. So here I have placeholder to display on my device. So there's no connectivity involved for now. It will display the temperature, humidity. But now I need to integrate the sensors. And you see there's nothing happening here. There's no code. I'm just graphically building something. Interestingly, the tool in the backend is using Python. And if you switch to the Python view, you can see the code version of what I'm using in a graphical editor called Blocky. But the graphical editor, 7 years old, can use that. You don't need to be an engineer. You don't need to be a coder to use that. And that's my point today. You don't need to code to prototype an IoT solution. You don't have to. You can, definitely. And we'll actually do some complex things in there after, you'll see. Now, what I need is to connect my hardware. And the tool here is providing me with a direct integration, pretty straightforward integration with my hardware. So I have a temperature humidity sensor that is connected on port A on my little hardware here. So that you see you have different ports on the different sides of the device. And this is the Grove connector ports. And so I'm going to use the A here to connect to that device, to that sensor, right? So now I have done that. The unit is down here and will give me options in form of blocks to display something. So let me create a loop. Like lots of IoT devices, lots, if not all of them, have a code that revolves around a loop. Like you're going to do something on a loop down there in that device. So what I'm going to do is, and I do that all the time, little recommendation, put your timer first. Something that if you don't want your little chip that actually to go super hot and start doing nothing, basically, like if you forget that wait, basically the loop is like just rolling. So sometimes you want that, but in our case, you'll see you want to have that loop of a second for now, could be 2, but let me put 1 second for now. And now what I want to do is I want to set this label here to the value of that environment sensor. And in order to do that, what I want to do is go to my UI and go to the labels, right? And say label blah shows something. And so for the first one, it's going to be the temperature one. And what I want to display is the temperature. So you see, as simple as that. My label should show temperature. Let me repeat that. Label, which is this time humidity, should show humidity. Pretty straightforward. So my device is connected to the cloud, and that's the M5 Stack Cloud, right? And it has a unique API key that I typed into my tool. If you want to mess up with my demo, you can actually type it in, and chances are you'll be able to deploy to my device. You don't want to do that unless you want to mess up with me, which I won't. I won't take any offense for that. But if you want to do with your own thing, if you have an M5 Stack, play with that. If not, go and get one after, or as you'll see, we can use different things for simulating devices. So the only thing I need to do from here, because my device is not connected, is to run that application. It's going to deploy over Wi-Fi to that device. Device is running it, and you see instantly, I can read temperature on that display that is captured from the sensors on that device. Pretty cool, right? So here I have temperature, humidity. They are on that device. to validate that information of temperature and humidity is interesting of that wine cave thing. What I need to do is send that data somewhere. I could store locally and then pick it up later and do something with it, but I'd rather send it on the flight. This device, as you see, is connected over Wi-Fi. The USB cable is just for power. So what I want to do is connect to a cloud service and solution. Whether I develop it myself, whether I use something which is already, easy to deploy. I'm going to use Azure IoT Central for that. Once again, because this is a no-code version of what you can do. Everything I'm going to do here, you can do it at different level of granularity with different types of services and tool on the different existing clouds out there. The different cloud providers do provide value all the way from infrastructure to platform as a service to eventually software as a service or solution as a service here. And here what we're doing is using that top level, which is no code. I have the solution that allows me to create applications that I'm going to connect devices to, right? And my device has gone rogue because someone has been playing around with it, and that's fine, man. I appreciate that you're deploying to my device. So I'll override you in a second, no problem. If you want to send your text and things like that, feel free to do so. I'll find who that is. And then when I go back to my own demo and deploy, please don't mess up too much with it. But you can actually try that right now. If you want to deploy to my device, it's a good way of testing what's going on. And that's Abhishek. Thank you. Nice to see you, man. Let me continue with IoT Central here. So I'm going to hide the device, right? Real quick, where is it? Screen me, that's just that, right, for now. What I want to do in Azure IoT Central is create a little solution that will visualize temperature and humidity to start with. Then I'm going to switch to more complicated devices. So I'm going to build a new application here. Azure IoT Central makes it super straightforward. You need to have an Azure subscription, but you can try for free as well. And you have a 7 days free. The interesting thing is you can also go free for 2 devices with a certain amount of messages per month as a limit. If you stay below that for your prototyping project, it's all free. And then the cost and pricing and billing and so on goes with the number of messages that are going, or number of devices that you're connecting to your solution. So that's definitely something that you can check out in the pricing details over here. I'm going to pick a subscription. So I have many that I have access to because I work for Microsoft. So that's one of the perks, is being able to access all these subscriptions. Let me reassure you, we cannot just do whatever we want here. They're monitoring the consumption of these services, because it would be to your detriment if we were not doing that. I'm going to do one thing here. I'm going to put that StreamYard window here, big screen, so I can capture questions if any are coming. Let me then create that application. You have this dashboard, links to tons of resources in IoT Central. You have a page for the list of devices. There's no devices for now that I've been putting in there. So for now, there's nothing. And you will be able to set device groups, set rules on the data is coming, visualize and analyze the data, and implement jobs as well. But all of that is for another demo. Really here, what I want to illustrate is how rapidly you can prototype something. I'm going to go into the device templates. I need to define what my device data looks like when it lands on the cloud. And so I'm going to create what I call a device template. If I were to use one of these development boards that are out there that happen to be certified for Azure IoT Central, I could pick a template already available for me. So when you're prototyping, maybe you're going to say, I want to use that Azure Sphere board here because it has connectors that are interesting for me. I can extend with my sensors using a hat or using wiring, and then eventually some breadboard. And I'm going to use Azure Sphere. So as a matter of fact, you don't need to invent or create your own template in IoT Central. You can just import the one that is provided here and then points to some samples to deploy your code in them. So there's a variety of them, but I don't want to do that because I want to stay simple here. I want to create a new device. And that device, I'm going to call it M5 stack, for example. And it says not a gateway device. It's a concept of having a gateway device that allows connecting non-IP devices. It's not what I want to test here. I'm going to create that template. and I'm going to create my own model. And the model is going to be about defining what kind of data is to be expected from that device. Let me go into this model description. There is a way to do that manually using a format that is the written format. Once again, I don't want to touch code today. I'm going to have a first capability that will be called temperature. And that will be a telemetry. I'm adding a semantic type on top of it because I know what kind of data it's going to be. And I'm going to select temperature, right? And temperature will be a double. That's fine. And the unit will be Celsius or Fahrenheit. I don't remember, whatever. It doesn't matter. Let me pick Fahrenheit here. Actually, let me pick Celsius. I'm fairly sure that this sensor common data here. So humidity is going to be my second one. It's going to be a telemetry as well. It's going to be of type humidity. Let me see. Type it. Yay. Not going to be relative. It's going to be a double, and I'm going to use percent here for the display unit. Okay. So temperature, humidity, these are the two capabilities. I'm going to save that. And now what I need to do is create a view. So you have a visualization of that data that is provided by default, which is raw. And the raw data will just be the timestamp and message type and what's in there, right? What I want to do, though, is create a new view to visualize the device. So here, I'm going to create a view, which is called, let's say, telemetry. And I'm going to add a tile that has temperature and humidity in it. Temperature, and the other one is humidity, okay? And I'm going to add the tile in here, and it's going to display temperature, humidity in the cloud. All good? So far, so good. It's been pretty straightforward. I can save that view, and I can publish it. Now, what I have is a template. I described to my solution what's to be expected from the device. And so in that device template, I can find that and can come back and edit again, add more functionality, more visualization, and so on. Let me switch to that devices view here. Now I have a new device tab called M5 Stack, but I have no devices in there, right? So I need to create a device. And the reason why you need to do that is because you need to make sure that your device connects securely to your application. And so you are creating here a device name, which will be the display name, a device ID, and you're saying to my application, it's going to be of that type of device. And so I'm going to create that here. So now I have a device that has been created, and for now, it's just a provision for that device has been created in the backend. There's no thing that tells this little guy here how to send data to my application. Well, let's actually change that. In here, you can see some number of information. One is called connect. And in the connect section, I'm going to have information for that application and credential for that device to connect. Let me get back to my little application here. So this little application here is just displaying temperature, humidity on my screen. Let me go to the IoT cloud section. In there, you'll see that M5 Stack added support for connecting to Azure, AWS, Tencent, Blink, and IoT. And this is very interesting because that means that they're bringing to you the functionality on the device in a no-code way for you to connect that device to the cloud. So no developer skills involved here. You can very rapidly connect that device to the cloud. Here I'm using IoT Central. So let me pick that. And here you see the fields, scope ID, device key. Well, let me actually pick them up from my IoT Central application. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to copy that as well. And copy that as well. And let me go back to this little guy here. My stack. Okay. If you're not using that, there's a nice feature in Windows that allows you to use a clipboard history. Just do a Windows V when you paste something, and you'll get there. Well, actually killed my teleprompter. Sorry for that, guys. Been talking for too long without doing anything. Okay, so the device ID is going to be my M5 stack, and the device key here will be that longer key here that hopefully you don't have time to copy paste. And there you go. So here I'm going to initialize just by dragging the block once again. I'm going to initialize my connectivity. and I need to tell that, this is initialized. I can start the connectivity here. And what I want to do is send that data in a message to Azure IoT Central. It happens that IoT Central expects the format for that data, which is called JSON. And I just need to call one function, publish. So that publish function requires text here. And I'm going to build text based on some of that. So let me actually do that real quick. It's going to be something plus something. It's going to be that here, right? And I'm going to start the text by saying something like temperature. Right? I'm writing JSON here. I need to add the actual temperature value here. And then I need to add another of these and say this is going to be, let's put it in there like that. And then the next, if I do any errors in there, let me know. I'm really bad at that. So let's do that. Temperature. Then we're going to add something that basically adds a comma. There's humidity for the next one. And that humidity will be, oops, sorry for that. Stay in there, you buddy. And ditch that here. I don't need that twice. And we'll verify together if I'm making any mistake. Humidity here. Okay. Okay, so temperature, get that, do this. Let me add another one of these text additions. Composition. There's certainly a better way to do that. If you have it, let me know. I'll be more than happy to use it. Okay, so like that, and I need to close with, oh, where'd it go? Damn it, I just lost it. Okay, you get the point. I'm gonna redo that real quick without talking, because I'm talking to you guys, and so that's what's messing up my flow. Give me a second. I'm gonna do the other way around here. So I'm gonna close this little guy here, and then here I'm gonna have several of that. Okay. Okay, humidity is gonna be this guy here, and then text here says at. And the other one here will say, oh, this is it. This guy says going to be the temperature. Obviously, I messed up with this guy as well. Okay. Let me not push it away this time. And I need a text. So I basically need to do that. And that should be the last one. Where are you? Here. Okay. And this here and guy here. Super hard to do. Okay. So temperature and colon, the temperature itself, then there's a comma, humidity, get the humidity, and then you close the brackets, okay? And that's going to be what I want to send to Azure. Sounds good? Okay, there you go. So that's my publish message, and I'm going to just put it in there. Instead of sending that every second, I'm going to do every 5 seconds, because no, that's the way you do. You don't need to send data every second. It doesn't really make sense. I use map. Yes, better use map. I can undo. Yes, I can undo in there. You're right. I should have done that. Sorry for that. I'm not reading your comments. You're smarter than I here. Let me try and deploy that little application on my device. Let me bring the device back up there. It should deploy. It will start the connectivity to my IoT Central application. And I should see the data starting flowing here. So it's going through the Start Azure step here. And hopefully it's going to connect to my Azure application. There you go. So temperature is there. So now when I go to my application in IoT Central, I should see data flowing. And boom, instantly I can see temperature and humidity, right? Flowing from my device I can show you the raw data as well here. So you can see every 5 seconds, I have that telemetry flow that is coming, and there's temperature and there's humidity. So you see, like, it was super straightforward to implement that first part, which is the monitoring of my application, of my temperature and humidity. I'm now in the comfort of my cloud application, and I can visualize that. We can do more, but for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to an application that's a bit more advanced, where we can implement these scenarios. All of that in the context of IoT Central and using that device with that UI way of programming. So let me switch to that application, which is a bit more complex, but not very much more, because I just dragged in blocks to implement logics. So what I added to the application is I'm going to display what we call device twin. So there's a way with IoT Central, besides sending telemetry or receiving telemetry, to exchange properties, right? And so you don't need to really understand that, besides the fact that I can set a property on my device and the device can report a property to my cloud service. It's something that allows you to have an asynchronous way of communicating. Not all devices are connected all the time. You don't need to have things always happen in the form of telemetry. And so you can say, here's my property, and here's a property I want you to implement. So here, what I'm doing is toying around with some UI. I have this IoT Central bit and pieces that you recognize. And then I have something which allows me to get what we call the twin, which is the set of properties that the cloud application desires. And then I will be able to report the same set of properties, or a different one, to the cloud. And here, what I'm gonna get and set is the RGB values of an LED strip that is on the side of that device, so that I can turn it on and off and change the colors, which implements my scenario of controlling the lighting in my wine cave. Right? Remember that scenario. Keep in mind, super important. So let me scroll down a little. Here, I'm getting the temperature and humidity from the sensor and sending it to the cloud. That doesn't change. Then I have a little timer here that will get data from a new sensor I just added, which is a motion sensor. You can see it on the side of my device up there. And that motion sensor will allow me to trigger actions when I do something in front of it. What you can also do is, grab the buttons. I have a couple of buttons. I will show you what they implement as scenarios, and so on. So you see, it's like not a lot of code here. I will definitely share that. I have a blog that eventually I'm going to write a little article on what I'm doing today. Already did the first one on M5 Stack device, but it was actually at the very beginning of their implementation. They didn't have IoT Central support and so on. So I'm going to actually add that, because that's a very interesting thing. So here, my device has more functionality, and it connects to a different application. Let me actually deploy. So please, everyone, do not deploy your apps on my device. I need it for my demo. That'd be nice. And I'm going to switch back to IoT Central. I'm going to go back home. So you see data is still flowing for that first application. It will stop, obviously. Let me go to my apps, because I have an application already deployed, and that other piece of code is connecting to it and already implements a set of scenarios. So remember, we're saying that we want to monitor things. So that I'm doing. I can see a set of properties as well. So here I can see a location. So this is a property that I set for my device from the cloud. So here in the properties, I was able to set its location, and that's now you know where I live, which I'm fine with. If you can send me a present, I'll be more than happy to receive it. And now I'm playing around with things in there, right? Let me do something such as displaying raw data. You have it. Let me see what I can do. Oh yeah, actually, let me change the color of that LED strip. So you see here, I have some values for RGB. The device is down there. Let me set something that is like full red, full green, and no blue. And I'm going to save these properties. Once again, I'm in the cloud. I want to control the temperature of the lights in my room. And you can see here, the light instantly change on that device. If I want to go back, and actually, I receive a notification that my device accepted it. So if I'm not in the same room as that device, I can actually see it in there. And you can see the desired value and its reported value. All of these were super easy to set in my device template. So that's something I really urge you to go and try. So here I was able to set the temperature. I have a button here that actually turns the light off. Really practical. What I can do now is eventually send a command. So you have things that you want to be synchronous, right? Properties will be async. Now there's a command I want to send to my device, and I want that device to react instantly. So I want to try something right now, which is set the buzzer on or sound alarm, right? So sound alarm should be interesting. I'm going to turn the mic on for this little IP camera I have here, and so you should hear an alarm sounding in a second. Okay, and so the device being connected, it received the alarm command and sounded the alarm on that device. So now I was able to change properties in an asynchronous way to set the color of that display. If I had turned it off and back on, it would have applied the settings even of those properties, even if the device was not connected. That's a very useful way of controlling a device when, or testing that your devices will still respond if they're not connected. The command is really the synchronous way. I need an answer. I need a response. I can set up a timeout as well and do something out of it. Okay, so now I have the solution. I can visualize data and I can send command and control my device. So we check the boxes for my wine cave where I can see what's going on. I can start interacting from the cloud with that device. Obviously, functionality should be way more advanced than that. But let me actually do something else. What I want to do is let me switch the light to, let's say, all white here so that we have some changes happening. Let me say, here you see I have a little bug in my app that I need to go fix. Let me save all of that. And you can see the light is all bright. I hope you see it. It's not super clear here, but it is, believe me. So now what I want to do is I want to trigger a workflow. I want to automate something. When something happens, I want to trigger an action. And let's actually do one which is a round trip. Let's say there's humidity going above a certain level. What I want to do is I want to indicate on the device that the temperature, the humidity in that case, is not right. So what I'm going to do is in these rules, I created one which targets the M5 Go type of device. This is a name I set, not M5 Stack, in that application for that type of device. And I set a condition that says when humidity is greater than a certain value, which is 80%, I will trigger an action. And for now, you have several actions you can trigger from Azure IoT Central. One is sending an email. Another one is calling a webhook. So you can set up a webhook into your favorite application or leverage one. If this, then that is a great example of that. You can actually trigger flows there. There are other services out there that are very useful and practical. You can also use Azure Monitor if you're an Azure person, already have an Azure solution, integrate the events of your IoT application into your broader Azure solution. Power Automate and Logic Apps are the interesting no-code way of doing things, like if then that, but in Azure. So here I'm using a Logic App. And that Logic App that I created, let me go to it, is actually called Olivier Demo's Logic App. And I created it like super simply on the dashboard here. Actually, let me go back to IT Central. So here, if I want to create a Logic App, we'll click on that. It will tell me we're going to go on the portal and we're going to create your flow there. And so it sends you to the portal page. The integration of the development of the flow itself is something that is in the roadmap and definitely interesting to have, but not mandatory here. So let me go to that flow, and you'll see it's pretty straightforward. And what I want to see here is an action back onto the device. Logic App allows you to create flows using what we call connectors. So you basically say, when something happens, do this, that, and that. And the this, that, and that, or the triggers, are things that call connectors. And you have several services, a lot actually, more than hundreds, that are available in Logic Apps and in Power Automate. A Logic App being the enterprise version that runs on Azure. Power Automate flows, which is basically the I would say consumer one. So here I'm using Logic App. I could have used the other one. The one I picked one of the IoT Central triggers. One of them is when a rule is fired, I'm going to do something. And here I want to circle back into my application, and I want to set the RGB values, the properties, to a certain set of values when the temperature is fired up. So let's see if that works. Let me actually blow on that. You see humidity is about 24. No, sorry, 45. I need to reach 80. Let me blow on that. Usually your breath should have enough humidity in there. So there's a loop of 5 seconds. It's going to take 5 seconds for that humidity to pop up above that value. And here, boom, I see the light has changed to orange. They were white, and then now orange. Something happened there, right? Let me check back on my solution to confirm that. Let's see the devices, M5 Go. And here, if I look at the raw data, I should have received that property change that was setting the values to the ones that are indicated into that flow. Once again, a new scenario has been validated. When humidity goes above a certain level, it did trigger an action on that device automatically. A user which is next to that device can visualize that humidity is not good by that light. So it can be a distant user, or you can imagine your own scenario. But here, with no code, I was able to validate that scenario. There's the last scenario I wanted to validate is the integration into my business applications. How do I do that? And so back to IoT Central and the rules. Here's another rule I set in here, which is device needs maintenance. Let's say I'm a user and I see that there's a problem with my cheese, my wine, my plants, and I don't know how to fix it. And so I suspect this device is faulty. The sensor temperature is like off or whatever. And for some reason, my backend didn't detect that. Or, I bumped into it or whatever. And what I want is to indicate that I need maintenance. And so for that, what I did is on the template of my device, I added a new capability called needs maintenance, which is going to be a single message sent from the device at the moment I'm pressing on the little button on the device itself. And in the rules, I set up this device needs maintenance rule. And that one triggers, once again, a logic app when that value of that telemetry is true. And in logic apps, if I go back to my logic app here, it's going to be a different one, which is called device needs maintenance. And in there, I'm automating the trigger of a Teams message. Microsoft Teams is really great for, for interaction between people. And so here I'm creating a message. It's going to have a headline, and it's going to be an alert. And I'm going to send it as the flow bot to a specific user, which is myself, right? So we have this ready to go. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to press this little button here, which is going to turn this little light on. I could show you what's going on in Blocky, but bottom line is that it did trigger that message. And now I have this Power Automate message that just came in. Let me show you. And okay, my piece is going down. There's someone sending me another message, but that's okay. So the flow here has been sent, you see here a few seconds ago, and it says that thermostat maintenance is requested. And it was requested by the device, my M5 Go, which if you look here, I'm grabbing from the previous node in my flow here on Logic Apps. So here I validated that last scenario, which was about streaming or integrating my IoT application into a business application here very seamlessly. Now I have validated all these different parts of my scenario. So I'm able now to go beyond. Very small device, few minutes of coding, and I have that concept of an IoT solution has been validated thanks to tools that really simplify the way you approach IoT, the way you develop for IoT, both on the device side and on the cloud side. And really what I would like to do now is open up for some Q&A, but before that, I want to use some of the call to actions or bring them up. And we'll answer, I think there's some comments and questions there. So give me a sec to switch to the right screen here. That's always the same problem with where am I at with my presentation and so on. So call to action for you. This is a series of 4. So please go check out the next ones, especially if you enjoyed this one. The next ones will be even better. So I really invite you to consider joining us. AK Reactor, Simplify IoT episode 2, 3, and 4. Something as well, if you want to have more IoT content, and learn more about IoT, during July, we'll have a full month of IoT content and information and so on July IoT, which will be a blog post on our tech community site. So I really invite you to go check out aka.ms/July IoT as one of your next steps. So let me go back to your questions here. I see some have flown in. Bruce is saying, I hope this stream is recorded. It is, will be available on demand. And you will definitely be able to check it out. You can also reach out. You can also follow the IoT show, bunch of IoT information there, aka.ms/IoT show, where we publish on a weekly basis. And then, at oblogs, that's my alias, and that's also my Twitter account. You can reach out. And Asheroid is asking, can we have a better documentation for .NET samples on multiple use cases of Azure IoT Hub? So here's the thing. I work in the Azure IoT team. We're part of the devices and developers teams, or developers and devices team, and I will definitely bring that up to the teams. This is something that I know, for having been with the team for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been focusing a lot for device developers on things that are around C, C++, languages that are used for embedded development. However, as I was mentioning, not only for prototyping, but now more and more for production, there are different languages that are coming up on devices that need to be covered. So yes, we need to do a better job at addressing the .NET samples that we have. So we'll definitely work on that, and we'll make sure that we address that. There is some interesting content coming up around Nano framework that are just really relevant that we're going to have on the IoT show. Some of my friends out there, and we'll definitely do some there. So this was pretty much the only question, right? We had a comment about integrating with maps. So I did use a geolocation for a device to visualize the device on a map in IoT Central. There's way more you can do, obviously, but this is not the topic of today. Here you could see that very easily I was visualizing data there. So let me actually go back in there real quick, because I think this is interesting. Oh, this is not the one I wanted. This is this guy here. If I go back to the IoT Central applications on my devices here, I could see that one of the information is location. And here you see the map is pretty rich and allows me to visualize here one device, but it could be way more. But I guess what you want to do is actually add data on top. Visualize, for example, humidity and temperature as an overlay on map. Here in IT Central, you cannot do that yet, but what you can do is build your own application that leverages data from IoT Central. And here you can set up things that are called the data export. You can continuously export your data outside of IoT Central to enrich another application or to feed another application. Here, I have different set of export that I'm doing in that application. I didn't have time to show it today, but think of it as setting a set of destinations. The destinations that are possible today are Event Hub, Blob Storage, Service Bus Queue and Topic, and Webhook. So you can define rules and then export telemetry or properties when they change to a storage, to an event sync, so that way, or to a webhook, in order for you to extend this IoT Central application, especially if you have application that feed from a storage, for example. And so here, I have these different destination and different exports. I have all the telemetry that are sent to a blob storage. I'm actually also monitoring the property changes. And I also I also store all the device lifecycle events when a device comes online, connects, authenticates, and then goes offline, etc. So that's what I had for you today. The idea really was to show that you can very simply prototype an IoT solution. One thing I would like for you to take away is the fact that we do want to make sure that, or I do want to make sure that you focus when you're doing prototypes, not on the device too much, not on this little guide too much, because this is important. You need to get close to your actual device to really have sensor data that is realistic, that really illustrate your scenario. But focus on the scenarios you're testing. Right? Validate that your hunches, your hypotheses are valid using simple ways of prototyping. As a matter of fact, all of these translate really easily into actual production solution. IoT Central is not just for prototyping, is actually a great production tool with the extensibility that I just touched a little on with the exports, with the APIs, with all of that. You can go way beyond what I just showed you today. A last question. Are we having any demos, webinar on building solutions using Azure Function with .NET somewhere down the lane in the series? Not in my series related to IoT, but IoT plus serverless definitely is a hot topic. Triggering a function is easily done from IoT Central if you use event hubs. That's a good way of doing that. You can also trigger a webhook using the exports or using one of the rules. So you can definitely easily integrate to an Azure function that has a webhook trigger. That could be a good way of doing that. So thanks for joining today. We are on top of the hour. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode and looking forward to have you for the second one. Have a good day. Thank you.